In the previous video, we updated our two-dimensional array display to use stamps instead of clones, and we got much better performance using stamps, and we're able to put many more stamps on the screen at the same time than we were able to put clones. However, we put the stamping function inside of tick in our game loop, which causes the entire game loop to run at most 30 frames a second, which is the maximum that Scratch can do. So in this video, we are going to move the stamping code outside of tick so that we can actually see what the performance of our code is like, and we will clean up the code a little bit in order to prepare for reusing it to hopefully do more cool things in the future. So if you remember, our main loop has a tick function that gets called as many times as possible, and it has a separate block here which runs once and then sets a timer variable in the future called next render time to run again in another 1/30th of a second. Here we have some functions, adjust clones and position clones and clear dirty bit, that really aren't relevant anymore now that we're not using clones. So we can get rid of those entirely. Then here we also can get rid of the handlers that we're getting called. And then additionally, there were some functions that those pieces of code were calling that are now not getting called that we can get rid of as well. Here's adjust clones, and here's position clones, and here's the clear dirty bit. Now that we have a simpler main loop with only tick and draw, what we actually want to do is get the stamping functions to be in draw instead of in tick. So we'll detach this here, as all of this code was related to updating the costume of each clone. We don't need that anymore. And then this function that's in tick actually can both go into here. And what we actually really want to do is get stamp grid to be inside of draw. As you can see already, the number of times that tick is getting called per second has gone up dramatically. Instead of 30, it's many tens of thousands. And it would be interesting to see what update grid contents does if we start calling that inside of tick. If you remember, in a previous video we went through the performance of this function. It's looping through and changing items in this grid list with some random variable. And now that we're using this faster stamping approach instead of the slow clone approach that we're using before, it will be interesting to see what happens. Let's hook that up. You can see now that we're getting a little bit more calls to update grid's contents per second than we used to be. It's jumping all the way up to 60 sometimes, or now potentially even above 100. So it's much more than it used to be. It used to be 30, which was the maximum number of times you could stamp per second. But now it's a little bit higher. However, it's still really surprisingly slow. I wouldn't have expected that changing elements in a list would have been this slow, or doing comparisons or setting local variables like this. We can do a bunch more cleanup. There's probably some of these variables that are not used anymore, and I will do that after ending this video. But in a future video, what we can look at is trying to change the representation of this two-dimensional grid of pixels to use a string instead of a list and see if that makes it any faster. If you like this video, please press the like button and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.